So in the previous section, we talked a lot about the obstacles and the wish list. So now let's focus on how we can solve all these problems from a high level. So first of all, let's look at how we can bring the on-premises and the cloud environment together. So how do we provide the compute infrastructure for our workloads? So this is where many organizations today are starting to realize that they want to go to containers and they want to utilize Kubernetes, which have become very, very popular. So containers provide us with that flexibility to run our workload anywhere. And this workload mobility provide us with the ability to run the same application container workload in both on-premises and in the public cloud. Then service mesh provide us with the ability to connect the hybrid environment together. And this can give us security, control, and observability. Then finally at the top, configuration management will give us the ability to use policy to enforce the consistency of your infrastructure, they are spread across the different environment. So this is the outline of how we can try to solve those problems from a high level. So as we talk about container orchestration, Kubernetes has become the de facto container orchestration platform for many enterprises around the world today. And in Google, right? So Google is the birthplace of Kubernetes. And Google Kubernetes Engine, or GKE, it is a very mature product today. And Google has been running containers for a long time privately inside our data center. So GKE basically provides you with a managed service in the cloud so that you can use Kubernetes as a service. And then with GKE, you don't have to manage the master or the control plane, and you don't have to think about the underlying infrastructure. GKE also offers many complex and many interesting features, such as high availability across a region, auto scaling, where we can provide you with additional virtual machines wherever you need them, right, without you having to do any kinds of manual configuration. And there's a lot of really cool things that happens with GKE in the cloud. And now customer can extend that GKE compute layer from the cloud into your on-premises with GKE on-prem. So this is an integral part of Anthos, which I'll be covering in the main section today. So with GKE and GKE on-prem, customer can now have the same environment consistency across the different places. And customer can also use a single dashboard to manage all this environment in the same way, all from one centralized location. So next, the other solution that I want to talk about is service mesh. So when you deploy an application on top of Kubernetes, we like to think of it as a service-centric architecture. And the container pod, right, that runs the application has now become part of that service architecture. Therefore, once you have a lot of services, you need to find a way to manage all these services. You have to find a way to secure the connection between the services and to identify the services and also to extract telemetry data from them. So there are a lot of things that you have to think about, when you have such a service-oriented infrastructure. So this is like byproduct of using Kubernetes. And this is what Istio is here to help us to do. So to give an introduction to Istio, Istio is an open source technology for service mesh. And for the customer, you have a choice of using Istio open source or a Google curated version of Istio called Anthos Service Mesh. So Anthos Service Mesh offers many benefits, such as automated installation, automated upgrade, and Google can even manage the service mesh control plane on your behalf. So I'll focus more on the technology components of as I talk about Anthos later on in my session. So the next part is about how we can effectively manage all the different clusters as your environment grows. So in Kubernetes, a cluster is a sovereign unit. And based on the design, all these clusters that you deploy, right, they don't really collaborate among themselves. So therefore, you need to find a way that you can enforce a policy on all of them so that you can make sure that, for example, the configuration is in sync across every Kubernetes cluster. So this is another problem that you have to solve, especially when it comes to like running clusters on-prem and in the cloud. So you want to make sure that your configuration is in sync, and there are policies that are enforced, and they are basically resource management and consistency across them. So lastly, we have observability. So observability is about having full visibility into all your cluster across all of your environment, whether it's on premises or on the public cloud. And we hope that we can actually do this from one single pane of glass. So with a single pane of glass, you can see all of your environment in one place, and you can have collaborations right between these different environments. So when you have that level of observability across environment, you can have visibility into how that workload works on my own premises versus in the cloud. And for example, I can also know how can I shift the traffic so that I can optimize the traffic to my workloads better. So this is something that we can do with centralized observability mechanism. So these are all the modern solutions that we need in order for us to fulfill that wish list that people want when they start thinking about adopting hybrid cloud strategy.